The first American Thanksgiving was celebrated not in Massachusetts, as the story is often told, but in St. Augustine, Florida, on the 8th of September in the year 1565, between the Spanish and the locals. It featured, yes, a feast in the classic sense, and of course, the Mass. Always the Mass. Notice the date, September 8th. The first Thanksgiving in what would later be the United States was to not only give thanks to God, but to observe the feast of the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary, the birth of Our Lady. That was the first Thanksgiving in America, long before that ship sailed from England, a ship that carried actual ancestors of mine. Yes, there were actual ancestors of mine aboard, but our forebears in the faith did it first, 56 years before that, in Florida, and they did it with the locals. The head of that group of Catholics was a Spaniard named Pedro Menendez, who had arrived on the coast of Florida and founded the first North American city, St. Augustine. At the feast they had, the Spanish most likely offered something called cochito, which is a rich stew made with pork, garbanzo beans, and onions. Sounds pretty good, honestly. We're not exactly sure what the locals added to the feast, but it's thought that they likely provided wild turkey or venison, or even alligator or tortoise, along with corn, beans, and squash. What is Thanksgiving supposed to be about? It's a day that we give thanks to God for all His blessings in life. It is only fitting that it be done with the saying of a Mass. No, it's not a holy day of obligation, but there is actually a Thanksgiving Mass offered by local parishes almost anywhere you go in the United States on that day. There's even usually a special dispensation by the bishops for the next day, for Friday, for the typical abstinence to be lifted so you can finish your turkey. Now, I know access to the Mass can be dicey for most people right now, but never let it be said that Thanksgiving isn't a Catholic holiday. It is, and it is a cultural holiday in the U.S., and it is a perfectly fine thing to celebrate it. Now, I know there are those who are so trad that they think they shouldn't celebrate the day, but here's the thing. Our so-called separated brethren don't have a patent on giving thanks to God, and frankly, we do it better than they when the Eucharist is involved. For then, Christ the King joins us in our feasting. Look, I know, if you can't get to Mass today, it's understandable. Between everything going on, and frankly, just how busy most Americans actually are on Thanksgiving, getting to Mass can be tricky. At least start the morning off with some prayers of thanks to God for everything. Today I'll be thanking God for you, my audience, and especially for those who support this work directly, as well as, of course, for the blessings of my family and married life and the privilege to live in these strange times. And it is a privilege. Remember, God placed you in these times for a reason, so thank Him for that. I know, sounds like kind of a hard thing to wrap your head around, but seriously, thank Him for that. And ask Him for insight into how you can be His instrument in these times. It may just be that you are called to be a witness for truth and Christ in our times. Maybe you're called to do something more. We're all called to be saints, and the saints all universally praised and thanked God on a daily basis. I know I need to improve on that, and you probably do too. To that end, I have something for you that might help. It's G.K. Chesterton's short essay called Gratitude. It's easily found floating around the internet like most of these kinds of things I present. I hope you find it helpful. Enjoy Thanksgiving and time with your family. Reflect on these words and let me know what you think. And always pray for the church. Now, the late great G.K. Chesterton. I received a little while ago a letter to which no name or address was attached, which touched me beyond expression. A great deal of it was too personal to treat of here, and for this reason especially, I regret the concealment of its origin. But the more generally discussable part concerned itself chiefly with a query as to my meaning, when I said in this paper something to the effect, "No one can be miserable who has known anything worth being miserable about." The remark was written as remarks in daily papers ought, in my opinion, to be written, in a wild moment. But it happens, nevertheless, to be more or less true. What I meant was that our attitude towards existence, if we have suffered deprivation, must always be conditioned by the fact that deprivation implies that existence has given us something of immense value. To say that we have lost in the lottery of existence is to say that we have gained, for existence gives us our money beforehand. It is quite impossible to imagine ourselves as really calling, as Huxley expressed it, the cosmos to the bar. Let me endeavor to indicate by a kind of apologue or parallel what the trial of the cosmos would really be. a white-haired, ragged man is convicted of having stolen a handkerchief from an old gentleman in the street, and is examined before a judge. Suppose he is convicted, and suppose after he is convicted he is able to say blandly and with unimpeachable argument, "It was my handkerchief." That is the position of God or nature or what you will. Suppose again that the judge and the court are in some doubt about this reply. The man says, still very humbly, "It was my handkerchief, I made it." "Made it," the judge will say. "What did you make it out of?" "Out of nothing," replies the prisoner, and waves his hand. 60 handkerchiefs fluttered down out of the empty air. The judge is startled, and looks keenly at the meek prisoner. Nevertheless, he continues, "You may have made the handkerchief, though in this somewhat irregular way, and so far, of course, it may be yours. All the same, you seized it from this old gentleman." The prisoner coughs slightly and looks embarrassed. "The fact is," he says, "the fact is I made the old gentleman too." "What did I hear you observe?" inquires the judge with deadly placidity. "Made the what?" "Made the old gentleman," rejoins the prisoner. "I can make 60 more if you like." He waves his hand. Instead of one old gentleman at the prosecutor's post, looking just indignant, there are immediately 60 old gentlemen exactly alike in a row, all looking justly indignant. The judge confers with the clerk and the foreman of the jury. The incident is one for which it is difficult for the moment to find a precedent. At length the judge says, "You do certainly seem to have some claims over the prosecutor, having produced him out of space in a somewhat careless way, but your offense against the court itself, your demeanor towards myself—" "I'm really terribly sorry," says the prisoner, blushing, "but the fact is I made you too. I'm pretty sure I'm proud of it." "Made me," begins the judge, purple in the face. Alas, the prisoner has already waved his hand, and there are already 60 other judges, all purple in the face. Then the prisoner, who has made all things, steps up the tribunal, his white hair flaming like a silver crown, and looks down upon the things he has made. Now these are the conditions of any protest against what Stevenson called the essential decency of things. When existence destroys the flower, it is not sufficient for us to say that we admired it. The question is not whether we admire the flower. The question is whether we could, in the primal darkness of non-entity, have imagined a flower, and then by the spasm of divine creation, made it. When a great man is killed in a railway accident, the question is not merely whether he would have invented the railway accident, it is also whether he would have invented the great man. The whole question in which the existence of religion is involved is whether, while we have feelings about the catastrophic, we are or are not to have feelings about the normal. That while we curse our luck for a house on fire, we are to thank anything for a house. If we come upon a dead man, we start back in horror. Are we not to start with any generous emotion when we come upon a living man? That far greater mystery. Are we to have any gratitude for the positive miracles of life? We thank a man for passing the mustard. Is there indeed nothing that we can thank for the man who passes it? For the great, fat, living, two-legged, two-eyed fairy tale, who by the mystical avenues of ears and hands is magically agitated to pass the mustard? Is the offering to us of that creature so small a civility, that we shall not even say a word about it? No, most men have felt that we should say a word. Most men have felt that many words even should be said in the matter, and so great cathedrals have risen in this land, and little churches in every parish, and immense religions over every part of the earth, and vast theological philosophies, and vast theological cosmogonies. A vast system of heaven and earth and hell with praises and sacrifices, because men refuse to regard the mustard as of more value to us than the man who passed it. If they gave thanks for one, they must give thanks for the other. And so temples have been built. The man who passed the mustard ought to have a statue outside each of them.